Hi, my name is Mercedes Smith, and I gave birth to a son in 1991 in Rikers Island. Rikers Island. I didn't know I was pregnant when I first got arrested. I had just given birth to a son who was 2 months old, who was at home with my mom. So I didn't know I was pregnant. I hadn't even missed my cycle yet. And I went to the doctor because I started feeling sick, nauseous all the time. So I went to the doctor, I signed sick call, and I went to see the doctors on Rikers Island. And I said to the nurse, I said, well, look, I don't understand. I'm really nauseous. I think I feel something moving in my stomach. And it didn't hit me that I didn't get my monthly because of everything that was going on. So the nurse exact words to me was, I said, and I also told I was gaining weight. And the nurse exact words to me was, stop eating the bread. It's probably all the bread you're eating. I was like, are you serious? I said, no, something else is going on. I actually think I may be pregnant. So she says, well, that would have came up when you first came in. I said, well, obviously maybe it was too soon when I first came in. So she gave me a pregnancy test. And I was pregnant. So the thing was that I just had a baby. He was home. I didn't know what was happening with my case. I was charged with murder, and I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know who I was going to send this baby to, so I was battling with whether I should keep it or whether I should have an abortion. Well, I was very afraid because they had already told me it was bred, so who knew what the abortion would be like there. So I decided to keep the baby. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell nobody in my family about this baby at all. They was coming to see me. I was acting like I was just gaining weight. I used what the nurse said. I was probably the bread that's making you gain weight. So I used the bread to my family. And they was like, well, gosh, you really need to stop eating that bread because you're gaining a lot of weight. And my cousin came in, and my cousin was like, I don't think she's fat. I think she's pregnant. And I knew then that I had to say something because if he recognized it, it was only a minute before my mother recognized it. Southerners have a way of saying that, oh, I dreamed about fish, somebody's pregnant. So sure enough, I called my mom that night, and she was like, wow, I had a dream about fish. I wonder who's pregnant. So I still didn't tell my mother. I think I waited a month later, and I called my mom, and I said, Mom, I just found out I was pregnant. She was like, Merc, well, how many months pregnant are you? When did you get pregnant at? I said, well, I'm like maybe 4.5 months, almost 5 months pregnant. So by then, the only person, we told everybody except for my brother. He didn't have any children at the time, and I already had 3, and I was incarcerated. So I continued going to the doctor there. One of my pregnancies, I started having problems. Like, the babies get too big inside of me, and they kick my kidneys. So sometimes it seems to send me into premature labor. So one morning I woke up, I was in a lot of pain, and I went down to see the nurse. When I went to see the nurse, they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know what to do for me. So I explained to them that what has been happening in my pregnancies is that the babies kick my kidneys, and sometimes it sends me into premature labor. So what they did was they ran some tests, and then they injected my kidney with dye just to check to make sure it was all right. And in fact, it was a little, like what she said was it was a little inflammation. Maybe the baby was kicking it or whatever. But they put me on bed rest, and I stayed on bed rest every night. I was on a maternity ward in Rikers Island where nothing but pregnant women live. Every night we went out for walks because the exercise. We went out for walks. This one particular night I was walking, and I said to them that I was in a little pain, and I said, oh my God, I think my water is breaking So at that moment, I told one of the girls to go back and get the sergeant, the captain. She went back and got the captain. The captain came. She said, what's wrong? I said, I think my water just broke. And you need to know that I've never had a full-term baby. I've always had premature children. So they took me to the clinic. When I got to the clinic says, we're going to send you back because you're not in strong enough labor. So I said, I don't think that you should send me back because I go from 0 to 5, like in 2 seconds. In the process of her talking, I started having more contractions, and my water completely broke then. I guess my mucus plug had just leaked out before. So she told me to go walk some more. They sent a nurse out with me to walk the halls, and then they took me back in. By then, I was fully draining, and they took me to the hospital. Going to the hospital, the officer came and she says, wow, look at here, look who I have to take out. The officer did cuff me. She did cuff me, but they didn't put shackles on my leg. Right into the hospital, I was in regular labor. It wasn't like coming close together yet. But by then, like, everything I had on was like wet. They put me in a wheelchair when I came out the ambulance. And the officer got ready to cuff me to the wheelchair. But she says, I don't think that she's going anywhere. And riding up in the elevator, taking us to labor and delivery, I went into full strong labor. And I was ready to push and everything. So they took me to a labor room. I can honestly say that the officer was really nice to me, but the doctors was nasty to me at Elmhurst Hospital. I guess they realized that I was in labor, that I was an inmate, and they treated me really nasty. I went into labor. They prepped me to have my baby in the labor and delivery room. In the labor room, not the delivery room. And the officer, she says, no, you're taking her to the delivery room because that's where she's supposed to have her baby at, and that's where she took me. And that's where I stayed at. I had my baby in the delivery room, and the officer was really nice to me. After I gave birth, she shackled me. She put the chain irons on my leg, and they moved me to the, I guess is where they took me to a room then. And they brought my baby up, and my baby stayed in the room with me. So my problem was, how am I supposed to get up and get my baby shackled? You know, walking with leg irons is very, very hard. So she says, well, you got to try. Now the officer that brought me out, who was really nice to me, she was gone. And they had officers that worked on that ward for, they had a ward inside that hospital for inmates, and the officers would come down and work with you. Because I was on the maternity floor, they didn't have a ward for maternity floor. So she was really nasty. She told me I needed to learn how to walk holding my baby. And I says, well, if I happen to trip and I drop my baby, I'm suing. Because I felt like it's very impossible, the pain that you're in after you have a baby, and to walk with leg irons, and to hold a little baby in your arm. It's really hard. So she left, and then another officer came on. So every officer was like a little different, because what the officers did, like the next officer that came on, she took everything off. She said, it's not like you could come out the room. She says, I'm sitting here outside the room door, and you can't get past me. And where you going? You're not going to leave your baby. So she took all my leg irons off, and she took the cuff off. And what she said to me was like, when her captain wasn't, when her supervisor wasn't in the area, only if he was in the area, she would put the leg irons on my leg. And then once he left, she would take them off. So I didn't get accepted into the nursery right away. And it was time for me to be discharged from the hospital. So my baby was going home. So at that point, I was like, my aunt hadn't seen the baby yet. My mom came to visit me while she was there, but my baby was going to stay with my aunt. Because remember, my mom already had a son he was there like only 11 months old. So I was like, I can't send him to my mom, even though my mom wanted him. But my mom was still working. She had 3 little kids to take care of, more than what she raised, because my mom only had 2 children. So my aunt, who only had 1 child, she took him, and her child was in high school. So she came to the hospital, and I told them that I was refusing to leave out my room because my aunt hadn't seen my baby, and they could give my aunt any baby. So I refused to leave out my room until they told me that my aunt was there. a sergeant came, a captain came, and all these people came. It was like, Miss Smith, you have to leave, you have to leave. I said, I'm not going anywhere. What y'all going to do, drag me out of here? And y'all going to hurt me? I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just staying here until my aunt get here because my aunt has never seen my baby. And I need for my aunt to know that she's getting the right baby. So what the captain did was like, look, she's not a problem. Just make sure she's dressed. And when her aunt's getting off the elevator, let them walk past each other, but she cannot stay in the room when her aunt comes in. So what they did was they let me and my aunt bypass each other, and the officer stayed in the room with my son until my aunt got there. And my aunt took him home, and my son was 4 months old when he got accepted into the nursery, because they said that they wasn't accepting me because of my conviction. But you couldn't charge me, you couldn't deny me because of what I got arrested for, because I hadn't been convicted yet. So I fought it, I won the appeal, but I only did the appeal to help other women in that situation, but I didn't bring my son back to the nursery. My son is now 20 years old. He lives in South Carolina, and he goes to college, and I see him on a regular basis, and I talk to him on a regular basis.
Thank you.